Millions of Americans swear by chiropractors, and many physicians swear at them, claiming that chiropractors are unscientific and potentially very dangerous. My guests tonight represent both sides, and they're here to discuss what chiropractors can and cannot do for you.
Well, the technique we use is called chiropractic biophysics.
Please meet them now. First, Dr. Stephen Barrett is a psychiatrist, a consumer advocate, and a medical writer. Dr. Louis Sportelli has been a chiropractor for 19 years.
And it's a posture corrective technique.
That's what his parents are calling it, a miracle. That's because one day their son was pretty much confined to a wheelchair. The next he was buzzing around on his own two legs, and that's not all.
Are chiropractors doctors? Do you have a medical degree?
No, and I don't want a medical degree. If I did, I'd go to med school. But I have a doctor of chiropractic degree.
The very top part of the neck. This is a model of that very top bone.
That top bone, known as the atlas or C1 vertebrae, holds the brainstem. In some patients, that bone can shift, putting pressure on the spinal cord.
You crack.
We manipulate the spine very specifically and very delicately.
What do you manipulate it for? What kind of conditions do you treat?
We don't treat conditions. I've just said that.
You don't treat anybody.
We've had many people that have responded very positively to that. But to be clear, chiropractic isn't a treatment for seizures. Specifically, in his case, it's the upper part of his spine, upper cervical area. And that was where the change happened right away with him, even after his first adjustment.
Instantly.
What complicates matters in the upper cervical spine is the fact that neurologically it's like Grand Central Station.
Dr. Johnson discovered Quinn and Ava's atlas was shifted to the right, putting pressure on the nerves that influence the digestive system. When the pressure was released, the ailments disappeared.
The fact of the matter remains is there are functional angina cases that go to their cardiologists, have had their cardiovascular system checked, have proven to be normal. They still retain their functional angina, which are fearful constricting chest pains. They go to a chiropractor, they have their dorsal spine manipulated, and by God, you know what happens?
Nothing.
What happens is they lose their functional angina. That's what's said by thousands of people, incidentally. This is one of the problems.
Let's start with shattering a myth about how we catch the flu and about germs.
Absolutely, and many people have that perception that germs are the single cause of disease. And if that were the case, then everyone would be sick and everyone would have the flu, because germs are everywhere. So what's more important than germs is our body's ability to fight off infection, adapt to the environment, and regulate the immune system.
Now, how can we do that?
Well, there's one system that controls the immune system, and that's our nervous system. Our nervous system is comprised of our brain, which is up here, our spinal cord, and these delicate nerves that control and coordinate every function in our body.
A miracle.
It's a miracle. It's a way of taking pressure away from the nervous system, so the body always does the healing. We just remove the interference and the body heals.
I will answer any letter that comes and send information about chiropractors. If you're going to go to see one, you better know what you're getting into.
You are tuned in to God's Property Radio. Here are your hosts, Sam and Dan.
All right, I go by Sam.
And I go by Dan, and welcome back to God's Property Radio.
What?
Yeah, that's right. Today we have a special guest, and I'm just going to give a little shout out there to episode 4. If you enjoyed episode 4 with Lori Ying, you are going to enjoy today's episode. Because today we have interviewed a chiropractor, and this chiropractor goes by the name of
Dr. Heelgood.
Oh, yes, that's right. Not only will you feel good, you're going to heal good. So what we have here is we're gonna talk about basically the reason for chiropractics, why he got into it, the benefits to it, and then we're going to cover a lot of the topics that we referenced with an episode 4 with Lori, a brief about psychotropic drugs, vaccines, medications in general, the pharmaceutical business, and how food, GMOs, non-GMOs, all that. So it's gonna be good. If you are a lady today, and not necessarily just
today.
A lady. Well, yes, not just today. If you're listening and you are a lady, you should find this rather enjoyable. And you don't have to be a lady to find the health things enjoyable, but I know that in this genre of topics, whenever Sam and I bring up the health side of it, our wives get very engaged in it. So sit back and enjoy. And yeah, I think Sam's got some stuff to get us kicked off here today.
Okay, well, here's my story. I guess I would be the reason why we're doing this interview, because
yes, you are.
God led me to this specific chiropractor, and I totally believe that. the Holy Spirit is involved in this, because 3 years ago I moved to New York, upstate, where we're at now, and I took a job here at this campground. I started doing a lot of different stuff that I didn't even know how to do. I was sanding some cabins one day with this 100-pound commercial sander.
It's kind of a beast.
Dan has actually used it, haven't you, Dan?
Yes, and it is heavy.
It is. But, I was lugging this thing around from cabin to cabin and having no problems, but I was also being very intelligent on how I lifted it. But, all it takes is one time. You just got to slip up one time.
Wah, wah, wah.
So I was bending over, going to grab this thing. I had detached the handle. It has a detachable pole and handle. And so I was just grabbing onto the little, what do you want to call those things? They're handles, I guess.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
But there's
like the lips on it?
Yeah, there's like these little lips that you grab onto. And so I bent down, totally not using my knees, just bending over, and I lifted up. And I have pulled my back out 2 or 3 times in my life at various jobs and just doing different things. But this was different. This was the feeling of something almost dripping in my back, or something sliding or snapping. Not necessarily the same snap that a bone would, crack or anything, but it's like something, all I can describe it as is like there was like this movement of almost like liquid throughout my muscles on my left lower L5S1 area.
For those of you who understand the spine, you know exactly where that is.
So, long story short here, I gotta sum this up here, but I have not been able to run for 3 years since that injury. It's been about 3 years now. I am just starting to be able to run. And I've seen 2 chiropractors, 1 physical therapist before I came to Dr. Heelgood, as we're calling him anonymously. And by the way, the reason why we're anonymously calling him that is just because we don't want to really give away where we are at. We just don't want people to know exactly where we're at. Is that safe to say?
You can email us and we'll talk. And if you want to come for a visit, we'll tell you where.
Because
we're at.
Here's what happened. See, I went to a town that was a little more populated than the small town that I live in, and went immediately to a chiropractor because people had recommended one to me. I had a very negative experience. I was paying $40 a pop, and he was spending less than 8 minutes with me, and it seemed like he just had another patient lined up in the room next to me, and it was just going nowhere. And I felt like I'm just giving my money away to this guy. And so many people had hyped up chiropractic, so I was really disappointed.
Which actually, though, you're going to hear Dr. Heelgood today kind of explain the different methods of chiropractic and what you were experiencing that the first time you went to a chiropractor. It's different than what Dr. Heelgood does.
Mm-hmm. It is. And I did not know this. There are different types of chiropractics. I won't, we'll let Dr. Heelgood get into that himself. But so from that chiropractor, I moved on to another chiropractor, and she was great, actually. I mean, whatever she did, I felt, some pain from it. And I don't mean like in a negative way, but obviously you have to feel pain sometimes to get somewhere positive. I think she was doing a lot, or as much as she could, but she also didn't have all the different types of stretching devices and, proper machinery that the stuff that Dr. Heelgood has. So she's really good with overall health and children and pregnancies. And actually for that, I will say that same chiropractor adjusted my wife when she was just recently about to give birth. And she was 2 weeks overdue. We went in there, and my wife was just fed up of being pregnant. Within 2 hours of being adjusted, she went into heavy labor. So
they now have a beautiful little girl.
Chiropractics definitely are effective. So I had gone to her, and nothing seemed to work. Also, at that same time, I was trying to be Superman by thinking I can I can play basketball. I can do what I want. And I really think I made my situation worse because anytime I would get any type of jarring from jumping or running, it was like back to square one, and it was awful. So I've spent 3 years just kind of living in fear. So then I was recommended to go to a physical therapist. I went and got an x-ray. They had a lot of different exercises that I was going through that kind of gave me temporary relief. But if I didn't do the exercises, I was just miserable. I have to say, I was definitely not
feeling it.
I was not up in my spirits for a good year and a half at least. And I think around a year and a half or two, I started to come to grips with my situation and just realized that my reality is this. And if God wants this for me, I have to accept that for whatever reason, I'm not going to be able to run and do some of those physical activities that I love to do. You know, like I said, I had pretty much given up until this last summer. Somebody had mentioned, hey, there's this guy in the town right behind us here. This is a very tiny town. I mean, we're in a tiny town as it is, but the town that he was talking about is like right in my backyard, and you would not think that there was, you know, a legitimate practice there that was making
a difference, an impact, really.
A huge difference, yeah. So this winter, I was in the shower, and I pulled my back out just from bending down to get into the bathtub. It was ridiculous. Just from putting my arms and resting them on the walls and putting my body weight on my arms. And that was it. I was couch bound. I had tried many things. I had, used heating pads, et cetera. I'd gone in a hot tub, done all kinds of things, but nothing was working. And I said, finally, the guy that was telling me this summer, I kind of shrugged him off initially when he was telling me, because I just had 2 experiences with chiropractics that didn't work for me. Not that I didn't believe in chiropractics, but I just thought maybe I was too complex a case for whatever reason. And I said, this is it. This is the last straw. I'm going to try this doctor. And I called. First thing they did was give me an x-ray. And Dr. Heelgood will explain the whole x-ray thing, but, the doctor that I got x-rayed by, they laid me down and x-rayed me at the hospital and then sent those x-rays to the physical therapist. Well, that doesn't really make sense because gravity, you don't get the actual gravitational pull of the way that your muscles and your spine and everything rests if you're laying. You don't get that same effect. I'm not as good at articulating these types of things. But anyway, Dr. Heelgood basically explained my situation in a way that I could articulate it to others. And I had never been able to do that. Everybody was using big words. They were saying that I had a degenerative disc and that, I had to do exercises to keep it from getting worse. It was never really gonna get to a point of, feeling really great.
I do want to say about chiropractic, though, if you've never done them, Sam did mention the second time you'd go get adjusted and you'd feel pain. You might be like, well, I don't want to do that. A lot of times when you are adjusted, and in my own experiences from it, that pain is not because they've hurt you. That pain is because your spine or your neck or the muscles more often have been contorted or twisted or stretched in such a way that they've been put back and now they're resting and it hurts because you're not used to it.
Mm-hmm.